Shalom, my name is Aaron, and I'm the director of CMJ. Currently, the Jewish people, our brothers and sisters, are reading through the book of Exodus in their lectionary cycle called the Parashat Shavua, the Torah portion. And the book of Exodus in Hebrew is called Shmot, or names. And while the book is about the Exodus, that is getting the people of Israel out of Egypt, the greatest act of redemption that God has done, until the resurrection of the Messiah, the book in Hebrew called Names reflects that one of the characteristics of the book is that people are gaining and becoming to a knowledge of their identity through a name. Most of the characters begin the book of Exodus without a name. Moses doesn't get his name until he is given it by the daughter of Pharaoh, who never actually has her own name. Pharaoh, the great adversary in the book, is not given a name. Moses' parents start the story without names, and God himself at the burning bush finally gives his name to Moses for the very first time. And many of the Israelites are encountering God for the first time and learning who he is and about what he does and about his characteristics. He is the great Redeemer because he redeems Israel from Egypt. He is the lawgiver. He will give us the law at Mount Sinai. He is our guide as a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. He is our shield and defender. He is a king. Exodus 15 is the first time we get a reference to God ruling and reigning as a king. He also is defined as a warrior. He fights for us against our adversary. And actually, our adversary in this book is also given a name. And his name is Amalek. We often call the enemy Satan, or the enemy, or sometimes in Corinthians, Belial, many names for the enemy, the great adversary. The book of Exodus calls him Amalek. And for the Jewish people to this day, their great enemy is the spiritual side of Amalek that always fights the plans of God. And I wanted to share with you just one verse because it reflects some of the characteristics of God and how he fights for us and against our enemy. And it's in Exodus 17, essentially the last verse, where the scenario is Israel has crossed through the Red Sea. They've watched the Egyptians be defeated. The plagues have happened. They're on their way to Mount Sinai, and an enemy nation called Amalek has come out to go and fight them. Now, they are the descendants of the grandson of Esau, so they're quasi related to the people of Israel. Lots of them were sort of related in that geographical area, and they've come to make the newly freed nation slaves again. So everything that God had done, that is in his act of redemption, was now about to be undone by the work of the enemy. And that's why Amalek becomes the name synonymous with the great enemy of God, because he comes out to always try and defeat the plans of God, even if he has seen a great miracle. And Joshua fights the battle against Amalek. Moses holds his hands up and this allows the Israelites to participate in the victory. And at the end, then Moses builds an altar and dedicates it to the Lord, who did great wonders. And it says in verse 16 of chapter 17 that a hand upon the throne of the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. And this sets up the idea that Amalek, from every generation, there arises someone who wants to come and defeat the Jewish people. And we'll call his name Amalek, or the spirit of Amalek. And that even includes that the enemy that was fought in against Hezbollah or against Hamas in our current conflict of the Middle East. We're not fighting against flesh and blood, fighting something worse. So the Hebrew is very clear. It does talk about the hand on of God on the throne. It says the Yomer, and he said, this is Moses speaking, Ki yad al kisei Yah, and the hand is on the throne, Yah. He doesn't use the full name of God. He only uses part of it, Yud, Hey, Yah. And that's interesting because the very next words are Milchama Adonai. It uses the full name of God, that God will have a war against this entity, Amalek, from generation to generation. So why does the hand that is on the throne, that is ruling and reigning, why is it only called the half name of God by Yah? What's so special about that? And what insights can the Jewish people offer us? Well, if you get your handy dandy Septuagint, what is the Septuagint, I hear you ask? It's the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, composed several centuries before Jesus. So this is only of the Old Testament, only of the Hebrew Bible. It's in Greek, and it was available at the time of Jesus. Much of the quotes in the New Testament are from the Septuagint, and it was probably more widely read than either the Hebrew or the Aramaic translations of the Bible. But the way the Greek renders this text, this verse 16 of chapter 17, it says, "Because by a secret hand the Lord fights against Amalek from generation to generation." Because by a secret hand. So the translators of the Septuagint, who approximately numbered 70 people, looked at this text, looked at why only half of God's name was said to be on the throne fighting against Amalek. And they said it's because sometimes God fights for us. We don't always know or not always see him in action. Like in the book of Esther at Purim, which we are about to celebrate, there is no mention of the name of God. And yet we know God is there. We know God is fighting for Esther, and he is defending Mordecai, and he is looking after the Jewish people, and he is fighting against Haman. But he doesn't do it so obviously. His name is not in the text. And as we go through history, and perhaps even in our own life and families and examples, we know God is with us. Can't always see him in action, but we know he is doing things and he's always with us. And we can take comfort in the fact that sometimes God's hand is not always so obvious to be seen, but he is there. He is always defending his people. He has never left us. He will not leave us or forsake us. And by his secret hand, by the hand of God, which sometimes we can't see, he will defeat our enemies. And glory be to his name. If you, I hope you enjoyed our little discussion on just this one little verse, giving us a close, a sort of a short hint at the character of God, that sometimes we don't always see him in action. Come and join us for a more fuller explanation at Torah Plus. Link is in the description. Shalom and have a great week.